Welcome. My name is Timothy Eldred. Today I'm joined by a guest named Monty Hipp, and we're talking about an issue that is dear to me because I hope I have it with you, or at least I hope I'm gaining it with you. It's a topic we all need, and it's a topic we need to be known for. We're talking about trust. This is Square Peg, Round Hole. Well, what time is it there, Monty? It's 8 what? 15? 8, 10?
808,
8:08.
808, 808.
Hey, I know you've got a flight today, and this is an early morning conversation. And so, if you're listening, I am talking to my friend and mentor, and I'm not sure which one he is more lately. He wears both hats, and depending on what tree he's talking me out of, Monty Hip and Monty, we're talking. You are in Seattle this morning. I'm in Michigan, and like I said, it's early, and you're catching a flight. So, thanks for taking the time. Appreciate it.
I'm glad to. Always fun to spend time with Tim Eldred.
We have a lot of these conversations where I mostly just listen. I got a feeling I'm going to be doing a lot of listening again today because we're talking about the issue of trust. And, this podcast has been being stitched together in my mind for many months, which means it's been being stitched together in your mind for many months because you've walked me through this, finally getting brave enough to pull the trigger and
Yeah.
start a new trajectory for my life for the passion that we've recognized to help people, number one, overcome
Yeah.
aloneness and the pain of aloneness, and number two, which I think are completely connected, and that is living with authenticity in a world that seems fake and artificial, where authenticity is not celebrated. So recently, in one of my podcasts, I talked about the issue of fear.
Mm,
So, because I think fear stands in our way of a lot of things, right?
yeah.
Fears, phobias, and I've got my fears. You know my fears, fears of failure, and fears that keep me from finishing, focusing, following through things you tell me all the time. But as I talked about fear, I alluded to this conversation that I wanted to have with you about trust, because there's got to be a foundation to our fears, or a foundation to our lack of authenticity, or a foundation to our sense of feeling alone. And I know we've talked about it, but I think trust maybe gets as close to the root of the fruit, of fear that we can establish. Now, that's my opinion. I don't think that your opinion is much different, but where do you take that trust as a root issue of our struggles?
It reminds me of a story of a friend of mine. He had a 5-year-old son, and he was teaching him how to swim. Of course, he had, on the little life vest and the wings, and was getting in the water. And it just, the story is so great because he's such a little guy, and his dad was 6'6", almost 6'6". So just this mammoth of a guy, and he's walking by the pool, and his son is telling him, "Now, Dad, I just want to get in the water really slow, and I can do it, but I just I don't want to be in the water. I'll do it." And his dad just picked him up and threw him in the water, and he just labored. And of course, afraid. You brought up that word fear, so it reminded me of this story. And he's afraid, but he makes his way over to this. Of course, he's got water wings on, life vest. He was going nowhere, he was going to float for sure. But he comes over to the side of the pool, looks up at his dad, who's standing above him, this 6'6" guy, and he goes, "Someone here is an idiot." One of the smartest comments of a 5-year-old that I've ever known.
Yeah,
I
and
am
true.
afraid I got something to say, and you violated trust. Someone here's an idiot. And I think that's how we all feel when that happens, isn't it?
Yeah,
Someone here is not doing what's supposed to be done. And boy, this subject is really an amazing thing. In fact, one of the great fears I've discovered in working with leaders, Tim, all across the spectrum, is that they have a fear that they can't have anybody they can trust.
Yeah.
And it's a minimal list that often people feel the ability to just be who they are and vulnerable without hesitation. That doesn't happen very often. If you find someone like that, like I have with you, that's a golden gift. And there's a big fear of not having that in your life, and most don't. So it's a really great way that you've kind of started this segment talking about, because it's true.
No,
Fear.
it's a rarity, right?
Yeah.
You and I've run in the same circle for 20, 25 years.
Now you don't need to talk about that. Keep going.
I always say I'm connected at the hip with you. How's that for a pun? um, and I guarantee that we both have mutual parties that
Yeah.
we don't get fully naked with, right? You use the word vulnerable. I like to talk about getting naked because I know what naked looks like with me, right? I know what naked physically looks like with me. It ain't pretty. And
Yeah, but you're working on it though, man. Okay, yes, you got that spa pool.
yeah, I
You're
got the spa
working.
pool, and somehow I'm up 6 pounds since I got the spa pool. And
That's because of what you're doing outside of the pool. Come on, man.
it's not okay. We're gonna get away from that subject because now I'm starting to feel guilty and shame, which is a whole nother conversation we'll have. Um, we've been burnt, right? And I wonder if we've been burnt and beaten so much that is trust an illusion? I mean, I know the answer is no, that there it can be established, but is trust so much an illusion because we've experienced distrust or betrayal so many times that it's really a fantasy that we've given up on?
I think trust is is an investigation necessity. Uh, there's a couple of quotes that I just think that are really important. Friedrich Nietzsche said this. I think it's really cool. He goes, I'm not upset that you lied to me. I'm upset that I can now trust you no longer." And I think it really
Yeah, because
hits
think
on.
about that. That's I want to absorb that a second. I'm not upset that you lied. I mean, that's one reason to be upset, but I'm more upset that you
Now I
just
can't
broke you.
trust you.
I just can't trust you.
Yeah. So I think what happens is that there is a hope that you can live with innocence and trust. Trust without investigation can often lead to great disappointment. Uh, One of the things that I've learned is, trust and verify. There's something about that. And we have this word that's out there. It's actually a word that I think I have this interesting perspective on that word, accountability.
Yeah, we've
We say,
talked
oh,
about
we are
it.
accountable. Well, yeah, you are. You're able to say whatever you would like to say, but getting to the point to where you will say, it's why I love so much, Tim, what you're working on authenticity and aloneness, is that people don't feel like that they can trust, because we often don't want to verify, because the verification can open up some things that require some conversations and follow through that's a little difficult when you just want it to be innocent. And the
Well, because
great
trust.
tragedy,
Sorry, I
uh,
interrupt. I stood up on
yeah, I
top
was
of you
just going to
there.
say, and the great tragedy is, Tim, is that did you know people can be trusted on 99 areas of life and have one that they're mistrusted and the other 99 get impacted?
Yeah, you shoot everything else to hell, right? I had a question I was going to ask, but I think we've actually weeded into it, and that was the idea: is trust given or trust earned? Um,
I
and
think
maybe
you have to give trust initially.
yeah,
There's levels of trust you just have to offer. It goes back to that innocence thing. Relationship is based on a mutual agreement. And so within mutual agreement of relationship, there has to be some basis for it. I like you.
hmm
I like
I
being
like you
around
too.
you. Yeah. I love to the sense that I get when I'm with you. So there's some things that you just want to assume. If I like you, I feel good being around you. I want to be around you again. Well, then can I trust you? And that's a hard thing. So there is an earning part. And the sad thing is, most people just want it. They don't want to have to verify it.
The one of the agreements I make with myself is that I'm going to doubt, right? I'm going to be skeptical,
Mm.
but I'll learn to listen, which might be what you're talking about, verification. So I want to give trust as quickly as I want to receive trust. Kind of like, for me, it's kind of the same issue of grace.
Mm.
Grace isn't earned, grace is just received, and grace is just given. The difference, I think, in trust is that we can break it so easily,
Yeah.
especially if we've been betrayed in the past. That's a wound that just burst open quickly with even the hint or smell of distrust.
Yeah. And the thing that's so sad about that, Tim, is that somebody else's approach with you causes you to have to live with their baggage.
Mm.
And I know in our own company, my business partner, Brandy, and I made a determination that when we hired people, we would tell them, you will not earn trust here. You'll have to lose it.
Mm.
You have it.
That's a massive difference of perspective than most people have.
Yeah, people are looking over their shoulder. And so when you know, and if you lose it, then that's going to be a challenge as it relates to the fact because you were offered it. But what it's done is it's opened such a door of relationship with so many of staff and people that have worked here, not worked here any longer, that have been great. And even if there's been separation, there's been an understanding related to that. And I can't tell you the freedom that comes. And I think it's what most people want. I know you and I both want that. You don't want to have to look over your shoulder when you're looking at somebody in the eye.
Yeah. We've been
What's
talking about that, you
where's
and
the
I, of
blind side? Yeah.
working to develop a definition of authenticity, which trust looks like, right? And that's not having to second guess what you just said, not having to look over your
Yeah.
shoulder. That's the same thing with trust. The question
There's some
now,
things
and
that I was just going to say, there's some things that I think we all desire that we just want to be able to do. You want to be able to just count on some things. There's just some things and people you just feel like you should be able to trust. Like I went the other day to Starbucks. I count on Starbucks. That's my anchor. It's my anchor in life. I went to the store, it was closed. I was like, oh no, wait a minute. This is something I depend on. You can't be closed. We've got to get your staff hired. We've got a problem. You feel like you should be able to count on your family, your friends, their organization, your healthcare worker, your doctor. You feel like you walk in there, you don't want to be looking over your shoulder, go, well, I'm gonna triple check everything you say to me, doc. And sometimes you have to get a second opinion when something's really serious. But when you just have that loss of a basic sense of just things and people you feel like you should be able to count on, and when you can't, it changes you.
well, we've dabbled in it, but so what are a few things that destroy trust? I mean, tangible
Oh,
things that destroy trust.
it's interesting. I think it's probably really good to know how do you destroy it if you know what builds it. You
Okay.
don't know how do you destroy something if you don't know what it's anchored on. And I think there's just a couple of things that come to my mind when I think about that are really important to me. Is that uh, I think I've probably said to you, Jim, before. One of the greatest things about telling the truth is you don't have to have any memory. You don't even have to worry about
Right.
any other illness or memory loss issues or anything. You just tell the truth. You don't have to remember a thing. That builds trust. And if you build and the other thing, what we'll do is just time together. Abraham Lincoln, I think is probably one of his most famous quotes, and I think you probably know it well, says you can fool some of the people all the time and all
Yeah.
the people some of the time, but you cannot fool all the people all the time. Sooner or later, you're going to wear what's packed in the suitcase of life. And so what builds trust is this consistency, follow through, dependability, confidentiality. One of the biggest, because when someone's listening to you talk and you're saying something about another individual, it's a fascinating thing in the back of your mind. I know at least mine, maybe I'm demented. It could be very true, as I'm always wondering, when is my turn?
Yeah, right.
So what destroys trust? Well, I think there's a couple of different things that destroy it, given those parameters of what builds it. Is broken confidence is one of them. Well, you want to talk about closing somebody off pretty quickly, is if someone breaks your confidence. And man, it's one of the things that I protect more than probably any other attribute.
It's one of your
Lies will
signatures. I
do
mean,
it.
we talk about signature, you and I, is one of your signature traits. And I think that's why the last 2 years of our relationship, from a professional standpoint, has been really powerful, because I know that, I mean, you are among like two people, right? That I can just get completely exposed with, knowing that it's not leaving your lips.
Yeah, not ever. Not even if the relationship were to end, and that's where it goes off. I spent 9 years working in Washington, D.C., and one of the lessons I learned there, Tim, is that, oh man, you're trusted with your circle in the moment, but when they're out of that circle, it's amazing when someone disagrees with you, they'll expose you. And that's just something that causes people not to. You know what else will break it? Just a lie. The verification of something's not accurate, it does damage, especially when there is innocence.
Mm.
I give you my confidence. I put my confidence in you. A lack of respect breaks trust. When you don't provide dignity, honor, respect for people, that's kind of hard to swallow over any length of time. You may be able to have it happen once. Intentional hurt. When you feel like someone came at you, you don't forget that very easily. And repeated offenses, being let down, those things really do break trust.
You know, I wrote down, I call it a Montyism, right? I think you call
Mm.
them Montyisms as well. I have all kinds of notes in notebooks and Google Docs. I wrote this down this morning on my notes, that you had said people want memories together, but do not share moments that create them. And I'm just thinking about what you said about whether it be a trust building or a trust breaking behavior. They all create memories.
Yeah.
They all create memories, and some stick there, some are harder to forget. And I don't know, maybe the trust breaking is easier to hold on to, but the only way it can be rectified is by more trust building memories that displace it.
It's so true. And especially if someone's disappointed you or frustrated you before, if you're involved in a marriage, a significant other relationship, or something that is of super importance to you that you're sharing mentally, emotionally, intellectually, financially, you have something like that happen, it actually it requires moments back together. Because if you keep distance when there's lack of trust, you're on a long road before there will not be, as I call it, even if someone says they forgive you, I call them the one-eyed optimist. They'll be like, oh yeah, absolutely. You
Yeah.
better believe it. I'm
Sleeping
with you.
with one eye open.
One eye open.
So what happens to us emotionally or behaviorally when trust is broken?
Yeah.
What does that do to somebody internally? Because it's one thing to say that it damages a relationship, which is true, but it also does some internal damage, does it not?
Yeah, it brings sadness, just utter sadness. And when it's somebody that you really counted on, believed in, it can really rock a person's world. You get discouraged,
Yeah.
you get depressed, you have hurt feelings, and hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
It's really true. And then when there's suppressed feelings that are not dealt with appropriately and timely, anger leads to resentment. That resentment has a disappointment in it that leads to a skepticism that, as I call skepticism, is the loss of innocence. Now everybody has to live with what somebody did.
Right. So now the pain that Monty Hip caused me because of, breaking confidence is not just between Monty and me anymore. It's
Yeah, the whole
between
world's
me and it's
on
everyone's
trial.
against me.
Yeah.
And look at that. I mean, just
Yeah.
look at our media, look at our social media, look at our culture. It feels like it's me against the world anymore.
Yeah,
I
and you know
mean,
what it
maybe it's
does? You
always
said
been
it
that
so
way, but
well.
it's just it's escalating for sure.
Yeah, and you actually said what I was going to bring up. What happens when there's broken self-reliance.
Oh,
I guarantee you, I'm not going to open that can of worms again. You burn me once, that's my fault. Burn me, that's your fault. Burn me twice, that's my fault. And I think that really happens. And then you have this bitterness that sets in when that festers, not dealt with. Lewis Smedes wrote a book called Forgive and Forget, Healing the Hurts We Don't Deserve. It's no longer alive, but it's a fantastic book. And he talked about redemptive remembering, that not holding somebody hostage forever if you forgive them, because if you don't, someone else or something else is in charge of your life. And as you know, Tim, I've worked in terms of the work that you're doing and talking with you is, man, just make sure that in that transparency, that vulnerability, that openness, that issue of aloneness that you're dealing with, that nobody can be an island and get through this issue of a loss of trust alone. Getting over the loss of trust requires somebody, something else to journey with you to walk through it. That's why you need those moments again with people, even people you love. You got to
that
have time with them again and say, hey, I need that consistency. I need that trust. And trust needs some time when it's been broken. But you don't have to hold somebody hostage. And I see a lot of people doing that. I work with a lot of folks that are living with the haunting of the past. And the past can haunt you or guide you. And so many times, the issue of a broken trust is guiding people down a path that they don't smile when they meet someone for the first time. They meet with suspicion instead of anticipation.
and it's a miserable way to live.
Yeah.
And we know it. And yet the reason I want to have this conversation and the second conversation we're going to have today is because you don't have to live this way. You don't have to live inauthentically. You don't have to live alone. You just talked about self reliance. So there's a lot of conversation lately about solitude, the difference between aloneness and
Yeah.
loneliness. And solitude's one thing, it's healthy. It's alienation or isolation, which is what I think self reliance is. But I wrote down another Montyism that I think goes to this point. Then I want to turn a corner just to hit two or three key steps to establish trust for both parties, as you say. But you said this: authenticity doesn't happen without trust or desperation. I want to capitalize on that or desperation idea just a second before we start to wrap this.
It's too important not to have. You want to know why? Because here are the broken trust behaviors. This is what goes down. You and I have both seen it. Everybody that would ever be in conversation with someone where it's been this way over time, broken trust behaviors are very obvious. And here's how some of them: an independent spirit, I'll do things myself. I'm always interested when someone goes, I'll just do it myself. That's a really interesting indicator. Escapism, people avoid pain. I'm not doing that again. And so many life controlling issues get birthed out of escaping someone's disappointment, a relationship loss,
Hmm.
something to that end. You blame. You start pointing the finger, and you've heard me say, I know 100 times, sorry about the repeat, but it's true. You start seeing people point their finger. I'm always fascinated at these three, Tim,
Yeah,
and it's
pointing back
usually
at
a
you.
trigger. This
Yeah.
is hiding something,
Mm.
and it's a disappointment. You
Hold
don't
on. You're
let
saying
anyone,
blame. You're saying blame is hiding something else.
yeah,
Yeah.
often.
Yeah.
Yeah, and insecurity. You become insecure. You lose your sense of confidence because the competency that you had in somebody is lost. And then what are the keys then to actually get it back? I think that's what your question, Dal, was. Time together with healthy emotional boundaries. If you don't set boundaries when there's been something broken, that's stupid.
Yeah. You're setting
Because
yourself up for failure again and hurt again.
yeah, I said, okay, hey, I'm going to invest in you again. I'm going to re-enter. Hey, I'm going to let this go. We're going to learn from this, both of us. But I'm also not going to be blind that I just get blindsided again and then just say, oh yeah, you said you're sorry again. That creates a numbness and an apathy towards life and relationship. That's dangerous. So the keys is that don't assume others will treat you the same. If you've broken trust, give it time. You have to be willing to and speak to it and go, hey, I want you to know. And one of the things that we'll talk about in the second podcast, we'll talk about some of the keys to it. But actually, you actually need to have other healthy relationships that people see. And that's really gets lost because sometimes you've violated trust. And if it's public at all, several people got to see you engage. That's why they hear about these accountability groups,
Right.
which is oftentimes a smokescreen for just telling you what I want you to know in that moment.
Right.
But when you see people surrounded with healthy, oh man, that starts to go, hey, these guys, these gals, they're on the right track. This is really good.
And you're
And
right. You need multiple
yeah,
relationships like that, especially to overcome
yeah.
broken trust. Whether you've broken it, someone's broken it with you, and you begin to build those walls in order to be believed again, there's got to be a plethora of witnesses to that.
Yeah, and then you bring truth into play with sensitivity.
Okay.
Because sometimes people will go, well, hey, I've broken trust, so now I'm just going to be blunt. Did you know blunt truth? You can say the right thing in the wrong way, and it won't be heard.
See, and that's what people think authenticity is. I had this conversation about 9 months ago with a group of leaders, like, what is authenticity? And I was disappointed in the response, but wasn't shocked by the response because I thought I was really hoping there would be a greater understanding of authenticity. But the number one answer was this: just, I'm just brutally honest. Well,
Yeah.
that's not authentic. Those are not synonyms right there.
Well,
Sometimes you
and
might
because
just,
people wonder, well, when are you not?
yeah,
If you
sometimes you
just
might
tell me
just,
I'm going to be honest with you, well, thanks. But
yeah, you might,
so
might
when are
authentic. You
you
might just be an ass the way you say things.
talking? Yeah. Yeah. The other thing that it really, I believe, really reestablishes and builds trust is walking through conflict together. You walk through stuff together. We overcame it. When you do positive together on any subject, but you do it together, and especially on a subject like this, hey, we walk through that together.
Right.
We journey that together. And man, I love those opportunities. It's one of the things I most appreciate about having the opportunity to invest in you, but also to be a friend to you is that we do that. We do that. We're doing that.
Yeah.
And I just think that that's such a wonderful thing. And then you know what else is the key? You have to have a desire for a better outcome.
Right. It's got to
If you're
outweigh. It's got to
trying to
outweigh the stuff you're going through.
yeah, if always weighing the disappointment and not the new positive opportunity, uh, you know, new day is really a good feeling when you have a positive, healthy perspective. And you have to have a new day environment when you're going to reestablish trust with somebody. And then you've got to allow there to be a track record that shows improvement. And then people start letting their guard down again, and it becomes healthy. And it's one of the reasons, Tim, I'm so excited about one of the things that you're doing is that most of the time people are alone, often because they made a mistake. They
Right.
don't feel like that they have the ability. I've let people down. Well, you know what? Good is good is good is good. It's sure tainted if somebody does bad because the good gets lost, but it's still good.
Right.
But everything gets thrown, the baby gets thrown out with the bathwater. And so um, when you have, I forget what the actual data is now. I read it a few months ago in my reading. As you know, I read over an hour a day. And there was stats on what percentage of lies people tell a day. Like how many lies do people tell a day? What's the percentage of people that lie? And it's like 98 point some percent of people lie every day in some way about something. How you doing? Great.
Right. I think I
You
read
just
that
walked out
exact
of one of
same
the most
article or
difficult
data.
conversations. Yeah, doing great. I was attended a school, college, and they would have these reunions, like campus days where you could bring people that you were thinking might be interested in come, and you see all these people. And I went one day, and I just determined I was going to do this just to see what would happen. Because how people go, "Hey, good to see you. How's it going?" And I literally a deadpan response was like, "Yeah, it's been the worst season of my life. I'm just doing horrible." And people were saying great before I even finished.
Yeah.
And then
Just
they were
a
like,
rote response. They didn't listen to a word you said or
"Hey,
care.
great to connect. Great, good to see you." And they're backing up. Trust is something that is a treasure. So you have to protect it. You have to guard it. And that's some of the things that we're going to talk about in the second part of our podcast on some what I call 10 contributions to trustworthiness. But it's just really important. And the thing of it is, when you actually feel that you can trust, as you know, Tim, my business partner, we're 50-50 business partners in our company, the CompleMentor. One of the greatest privileges of life is to have a business partner that you don't look over your shoulder. Why? Because there's consistency, there's
Right.
follow through, there's integrity, there's character. And when you're in business, you're working with people, counterparts, people, man, you have that, you have a gift.
Well, and that's why I wanted to have that conversation about trust, particularly with you more than anyone else, because you exemplify it. I've witnessed it in my life. I observe it with you and Brandy, your business partner, every time we connect. And
Uh,
so the integrity you have in it, and I don't just say that because people are listening or that, I have
oh,
to.
that's nice.
It's
Thanks.
it's true and it's true. Um, but you work at it. And
Yeah.
it's work. Trust is work. And I want us to take a break there and leave it at that for a couple reasons so that we can step back into those 10 contributions of trustworthiness, number one. And number two, I have a really small bladder. And so it makes a good place to stop in the middle of a podcast. But Monty, just tell people real quick who are listening where they can connect with you because I really want them to know about your work.
Yeah, you can just uh, contact us at our website at thecomplementor.com, TheComplementor.com. You can always find me on Facebook under Monty Hipp at Monty Hipp. So pretty easy. Be happy to chat and walk with anybody that might just need some encouragement in this arena because when you are in a place of that you've either broken trust and you want it back, or you've been broken, you've been hurt. There are ways back,
Yeah.
and you can do it. And man, here's what I would say in closing: don't allow somebody else's approach, their misgivings, their shortfalls, cause you to become who you don't want to be. Because there are people that are going to miss out from what you have to offer. Tim, I would hate to see if you became a negative, distrusting person because of the amount of people that so benefit from you authentically representing these kind of issues. Uh, I think that would be a tragedy. So if you, if you today, I don't, we haven't talked this morning. How are you doing?
No, we haven't. No.
Yeah. You could be right now having a really sucky day, and we're here talking about this. Go, man, it's been great. It's been really good. But when you've been with enough people and you look in their eyes long enough, and as you've heard me say before, never met someone who got smarter when their mouth was moving. And if you'll listen to learn, you can lead in people's lives and have influence that'll be really positive. So I hope that you're doing well today. It seems like that you're doing pretty good.
I am doing, and you would know the difference because we're having a conversation over Zoom, so you would be able to look in my eyes because you've seen me go through the really sucky days many
Yeah.
times.
Yeah.
As we wrap, I
I've
want
seen
to
you
go
overcome them too. I've
say
seen you
again
overcome them. I've seen you overcome them too, Tim.
with a lot of support, and I think
Yeah.
that's the same thing that with
Yeah.
trust, with a lot of support. Um, together, together
Yeah.
is the key word.
Yeah.
That's why we do this podcast, is because life is not lived. We don't do our best work alone. It's really hard to be authentic alone. And when you don't learn to trust or your trust has been broken, it's really easy to put on a facade or
Yeah.
be fake and put on a shell, a hard shell, and try to do it by yourself, which just creates for
Yeah.
inauthenticity.
Or if you're looking in the mirror and you don't like who you are because you're not trustworthy.
Yeah.
Some there's
Identity's a
probably
big piece.
Yeah,
Right.
there's some days, and you've heard me say this to you, go stand in front of the mirror and affirm.
Yeah.
Get a sense of resolve. I will not allow my past actions to dictate the future I want to have. So if you've broken trust, if you've violated it, if you've been the culprit, there can be a new day today. And you simply start by some of those things that we talked about. Be reliable,
Yeah.
reliable, follow through, make a determination that my authenticity, and if I feel myself catching myself expounding on the facts, stop, correct yourself in front of someone. They'll go, wow, that was refreshing.
Let me pick up that last sentence and end with that you can have a new day. Someone needs to hear that listening.
Yeah.
You can have a new day, and of course you can learn to be a square peg in a round hole. That's a positive thing. That's why we have that
Yeah.
title to this podcast. You can live with authenticity in an artificial world. And so,
Yeah.
Monty, you're going to stick around. I'm going to
Yeah.
use the bathroom, and we're going to come
Okay.
back and pick up this conversation. But everyone, thanks for listening. Noodle on those ideas for a few days, and join me next time. Join Monty next time as we continue this conversation. Thanks, Monty.
It's been fun.